Alright, Mr. Trutna here. We're going to finish up Unit 5, Worksheet 3. Today, we're going to be focusing on most of our problems. We're going to be focusing on squares, but not all of them. Okay, so as you can see, I've already done most of the assignment, so we're going to do the ones we haven't done. The first 4 we're going to go over is how to do numbers 1 through 4. We're going to do them. Okay, so the instructions say decide whether the parallelogram is a rhombus, a rectangle, or a square, and then you want to explain. So in each one of the problems, you are looking and you're saying, all right, is that shape, which, by the way, they're telling you is a parallelogram already. Arshak, what's happening? Come on in. Arshak, you better hurry up. I'm recording right now. What do you need? What?
Water bottle.
All right, everybody, say hi to Arshak. Hi, Arshak, what's going on?
Hey, what's up?
All right. Okay, have a good weekend.
Yeah, thanks.
We'll see you. Okay, so a rectangle, or we're deciding if it's a square. All right, guys? Okay, so number 1, what would you say it is? Okay, well, it's got right angles. And the opposite angles are equal to each other. All right, so what would that make it? Well, that would make it a rectangle. All righty? Out of these 3 shapes, the only two of them have right angles. It's a rectangle or a square, and it can't be a square because a square, all the sides are equal. So it's a rectangle, and then we're going to put because
all staff, please put your attendance.
Has 4 right angles and 2 pairs of congruent sides. Michaela's here. I'm recording, Michaela.
I know.
You get in your bag?
Yeah.
All right, you now will be on film forever.
Okay.
And 2 pairs of congruent sides. That was Michaela right there, everybody. Everybody, give Michaela a round of applause. There we go. Michaela, you want to say hi? We'll put you on the camera. Okay.
Hi.
All right. Okay, have a good weekend.
Thanks, you too.
All right, number 2. What type of shape is this right here? Okay, you guys, so number 2, well, it's got right angles, so like we said. It has to be a rectangle or a square, but all the sides are equal, therefore number 2 is a square. Okay, so it's going to be square because, and then I'm going to shorten this up a little bit. There's 2 reasons why I know it's a square. Number 1 has 4 right angles. Okay, so that doesn't make it a square by itself, because if it has 4 right angles, it could be a rectangle or a square, but it has 4 congruent sides. Okay, so there we go. Those are all, that's why that's a square. Now, number 3 is probably the most difficult one out of all of them, but there's a clue in number 3. So if you notice in number 3, here's the information it gives us. It tells us this angle is 90 degrees. It tells us that the top and the bottom sides are congruent, but it also tells me the top and the bottom sides are parallel to each other. Okay, but it doesn't tell me anything about these 2 sides over here. Now, here's the key. Since the top is parallel to the bottom, that means that all of these angles have to be 90 degrees. Okay, so even though this angle is the only one that's marked as 90, all of the angles have to be 90 degrees. So that means it has to be a rectangle or it has to be a square. All right, now in order for it to be a square, it has to have 4 congruent sides. Does it have 4 congruent sides? The answer is there's no way for us to tell. Okay, but it has those 2 sides that are congruent, so we're going to say it's a rectangle. All right, so number 3 is going to be a rectangle. Forgot how to spell for a moment. Because number 1 has 4 right angles. Okay. And the second reason is that it has 1 pair of congruent and parallel sides. So, if you have only 1 pair of sides that are both congruent and parallel, then really what that means is that those other 2 sides are going to be congruent to each other, but you can tell they're different. Number 4, moving on. So number 4, the only thing we know is that it has 4 equal sides. So that means it could be a rhombus or it could be a square, but it's not a square because we don't have the 90-degree angles. So number 4 would be a rhombus. Okay? And my reasoning would be because number 1 has 4 congruent sides. And the second reason, now just having four congruent sides doesn't necessarily make it a rhombus. It still could be a square, but it has no right angles. Okay, so because it has four congruent sides and because it has no right angles, that means this four-sided shape, this parallelogram, has to be a rhombus. All right, okay, the next problem that we were doing was numbers 13 and number 14, and we're doing the same thing as we were doing in the first four problems. So you can see it says, classify each of the following parallelograms as a rhombus, a rectangle, or a square, and then we're going to explain why it is. So let's go to number 13. Number 13, we're told that side MO is congruent to side PN, so I'm going to mark that in my picture. I'm sorry, those aren't even sides. Diagonal MO is congruent to diagonal PN. So here's PN right here. And then MO I'll highlight in green. So we are told that the diagonals are equal to each other. Okay, so which one of these shapes has equal diagonals? Okay, well, a rhombus does not have equal diagonals. In a rhombus, one diagonal is shorter than the other one. A rectangle has equal diagonals. A square has equal diagonals. Okay, so which one of these shapes would this be? All right, well, if you notice, it's going to be a square if all the sides are the same. Well, do all the sides look the same to you? The answer is no, so I would say that this one is a rectangle. Okay, why? Because, and BC means because, okay, diagonals are congruent. And now, just because the diagonals are congruent, that does not make it a rectangle. It could be still a square, but the second thing would be that I know it's all sides are not congruent. All right, so that's why I chose a rectangle instead of a square. If all the sides were congruent, then I would say it's a square. Okay, number 14, we know that A to C is congruent to B to D. So in other words, the two diagonals, there's one of them, that's B to D, and the other diagonal is A to C. So in other words, the two diagonals are congruent to each other. So once again, congruent diagonals eliminates rhombus. It could be a rectangle or a square. But then if you notice, the next thing that we have is, we have this 90 degrees here. So that means the diagonals are perpendicular. So that means this shape has to be a square. Okay? Because, number one, diagonals are congruent. So I know it's a square because the diagonals are congruent. And that doesn't make it a square by itself. But number two, the diagonals are perpendicular. Okay? A rectangle does not have perpendicular diagonals. So that's why that one had to be a square. Okay, moving on to number 18, and I believe that was the last problem from the worksheet that we haven't done yet. So if you notice, the instructions for number 18 say, for what value of x is the figure the given special parallelogram? So in number 18, we are told that the shape is a square. We want to find the value of x, and we are told that this angle right here, which would be this angle, that angle right there, is represented by the mathematical expression 7x plus 3. Okay, well, to solve for x, we have to write an equation. So my equation would be 7x plus 3 equals something. Now, how many degrees is that angle right there? Well, remember, in a square, the diagonals, every angle is 90 degrees. I'll jump over here to give you an example so it doesn't get convoluted over here. But the diagonal bisects the 90, and like we talked about in class, that makes both of those 45. So that means that this angle is 45. They're all 90, so they all get cut into a bunch of littler 45s. So 7x plus 3 equals 45. Subtract 3 from both sides. 7x is equal to 42. Divide by 7. X is equal to 6. Okay, and that would be the answer right there. All right, enjoy.